The fastest way to disappear from a man's mind is to keep reminding him that you are there. Ride that again. Because when you are afraid that he is forgetting you, your first instinct is usually to reach for your phone. You want to send the message, share the song, react to his story, ask how he has been. Create some small excuse to place yourself back in front of him. But every time you force your presence into his day, you may be removing the very thing that could have made him think about you on his own. Space, silence. The unanswered question of what you are doing now that you are no longer waiting for his attention. A man does not remember a woman forever because she texted him every morning. He remembers her because of how he felt when she was near, what he discovered about himself through her presence, and what became painfully clear when that presence was no longer available. You do not stay on his mind by constantly entering his phone. You stay on his mind by creating an emotional experience that cannot be replaced by another notification. And that is where so many women become confused. They think staying silent means playing a game. They believe they must disappear for a certain number of days so he will panic, miss them, and come running back. But silence used as manipulation is still chasing. You may not be sending him a message, but emotionally, you are still standing outside his door. You are counting the hours, checking whether he viewed your story, posting something designed specifically to make him jealous, imagining how he will react when he sees you looking happy. That is not detachment. That is texting him without using words. Real silence is different. Real silence begins when you stop making every decision about what he might think. It begins when you stop performing your life for an audience of one. It begins when your happiness is no longer a message you are trying to send him. And strangely, that is often the moment your absence becomes powerful, because a woman who is pretending not to care is easy to feel. But a woman who has genuinely returned to herself creates a completely different kind of silence. Her silence is not punishment. It is not a threat. It is not a test. It is the natural sound of a woman who is no longer abandoning herself to keep a connection alive. You must understand something important. No technique can guarantee that another person will think about you forever. Human beings are not machines. Love cannot be forced and memory cannot be controlled, but some people remain in our minds for years because they represented something rare, peace in a chaotic season, truth when everyone else was pretending, warmth without pressure, confidence without cruelty. Love without self-betrayal. A woman becomes unforgettable when she leaves behind more than conversation. She leaves behind contrast. He remembers how different life felt around her. He remembers the calm in her voice, the depth in her eyes, the way she listened without trying to own him, and the way she respected herself enough to leave when the connection stopped respecting her. That kind of woman does not need to keep texting. Her absence speaks because her presence once had meaning. Think about the people you still remember. You probably do not remember every word they said. You may not remember what they wore or what day you met them, but you remember how you felt. You remember the teacher who made you believe you were capable, the friend who stayed when your life was falling apart, the stranger whose kindness reached you on the exact day you needed it. Mirror is emotional. So when you ask, how do I stay on his mind? The deeper question is not, what should I text him? The deeper question is, what did he feel in my presence? Did he feel understood? Did he feel challenged to become better? Did he experience your warmth without feeling that he had to manage your anxiety? Did he see a woman who loved deeply but could still stand firmly inside her own life? Or did the connection become filled with fear, checking, over-explaining, pressure, and the constant need for reassurance? This is not about blaming yourself. It is about reclaiming your power, because you cannot change what has already happened, but you can decide who you become from this moment forward. And the woman you become after the silence may be the woman he never manages to forget. When you stop texting him, the first person who feels the silence is not always him. It is you. You feel the empty space where the conversation used to be. You notice the moments when you would normally send him a picture, tell him about your day, or ask what he is doing. Your hands remember the habit before your heart has accepted the distance. That is why silence can feel unbearable at first. You're not only missing a person, you're withdrawing from a pattern. Every message used to give you a small moment of relief. Even if his reply was cold, delayed, or confusing, at least you had done something. At least you had temporarily escaped the uncertainty. Now you must sit with the question you were trying to avoid. What happens when you stop reaching for someone who is not reaching for you? At first, it may feel as though you are losing him, but eventually, You begin to realize that you are finding yourself. You notice how much of your energy had been organized around his behavior. Your mood depended on whether he replied. Your confidence rose when he showed interest and collapsed when he became distant. Your day could be transformed by a few words on a screen. You called it love, but part of it was emotional dependence. And the moment you begin to break that dependence, something inside you becomes stronger. You stop asking, "What can I do to make him choose me?" You begin asking, "Why was I working so hard to convince someone of my value?" That question changes everything, because the women who remain unforgettable are not always the most beautiful women a man has met. They are not always the most available, the most entertaining, or the most willing to tolerate confusion. They are often the women who knew when to stop, the women who did not keep negotiating for basic effort, the women who could say, "I care about you, but I will not lose myself trying to keep you." There is something unforgettable about a person who loves you without begging you to recognize the value of that love. He may not understand it immediately. Sometimes a man does not fully recognize a woman's emotional value while he still has unlimited access to her. When your attention is always available, he does not have to consider what life would feel like without it. When you always initiate, repair, forgive, and return, he never has to experience the consequences of emotional distance. Your constant presence protects him from the reality of losing you. Silence removes that protection, but silence only has meaning when it is connected to self-respect. If you stop texting for 3 days and then return with a long emotional paragraph, the pattern has not changed. You have simply paused it. If you disappear while watching his every move from another account, your body may be silent, but your energy is still chasing. If you post calculated pictures to provoke him, you are still asking for his reaction. True absence begins when you refuse to use your life as a performance. You do not need to prove that you are happy. You need to become connected to things that genuinely make you feel alive. Go back to the parts of yourself you neglected while trying to understand him. Return to the friendship you kept postponing. Return to the book you stopped reading. Return to the gym, the art, the prayer, the work, the quiet morning, the dream you placed on hold because emotional uncertainty consumed all your attention. Your life must become larger than the question of whether he misses you, because when your life becomes larger, your energy changes. You stop entering rooms wondering whether you are desirable. You begin entering rooms knowing that you belong there. You stop waiting for someone to choose you before you begin living. You choose your life first. And this creates a kind of confidence that cannot be manufactured through clever messages. A man can feel when a woman is looking to him for permission to feel valuable. He can also feel when she has remembered that her value existed before he arrived. The second woman stays with him, not because she tried to dominate his thoughts, but because she became a mirror of something he may not have developed within himself: wholeness, self-trust. Emotional discipline, the ability to love without collapsing. You may believe that texting him keeps the bond alive, but sometimes your messages are keeping a dead version of the bond alive while preventing either of you from seeing the truth. Perhaps he cares but is emotionally unavailable. Perhaps the timing is wrong. Perhaps he enjoys your attention more than he values your heart. Perhaps he is confused. Perhaps he knows exactly what he wants, and it is simply not the level of commitment you deserve. You cannot text someone into clarity. You cannot explain your worth so perfectly that an unwilling person suddenly becomes ready. You cannot love a man into becoming capable of the relationship you imagined, and every time you try, you teach him that he can remain uncertain while you continue providing certainty. That does not make you unforgettable. It makes you convenient. There is a painful difference between being missed and being valued. A man may miss your attention, your affection, your availability, or the comfort you provided, but missing what you gave him does not automatically mean he is ready to love you well. This is why you must be careful when he eventually returns, because silence can make someone curious, loss can make someone lonely. Distance can make someone nostalgic, but curiosity is not commitment. Loneliness is not transformation. Nostalgia is not emotional maturity. The goal is not simply to remain on his mind. The goal is to remain loyal to yourself, whether you are on his mind or not. That is the power he may never forget. A woman who does not confuse being remembered with being respected. A woman who understands that his thoughts are not the prize. His consistent actions are. A woman who does not break her own boundaries just because he says, "I have been thinking about you." Before answering, she watches. Has anything truly changed? Is he communicating with clarity? Is he taking responsibility? Is he offering consistent effort? Is he approaching her with intention? Or is he merely checking whether he still has access? An unforgettable woman does not reward temporary emotion with permanent availability. She knows that a message is easy, chump is expensive, anyone can say they miss you late at night. The question is whether they can show up for you in the daylight. This is where your silence protects you. It gives you enough distance to observe without being pulled back into the same emotional cycle. When you were constantly texting, every conversation created new hope. One affectionate sentence could make you forget weeks of inconsistency. One apology could erase your memory of the pattern. One moment of closeness could convince you that everything was about to change. Distance restores perspective, and it allows you to see the whole story instead of reacting to the latest chapter. And when you see clearly, you become difficult to manipulate, not because you become cold, because you become honest. You stop calling inconsistency mixed signals. You stop calling avoidance fear of intimacy. You stop calling the bare minimum potential. You stop translating silence into secret love. You let behavior speak its own language. If a man wants to build something with you, he will eventually need to move towards you with clarity. You should not have to keep creating opportunities for him to do what he already knows how to do. He knows how to use his phone. He knows how to find you. He knows that you care. The question is not whether he has enough information. The question is whether he has enough intention, and you cannot supply intention for another person. What you can do is become still enough to see whether it exists. This stillness may be uncomfortable because it removes your illusion of control. When you send a message, you feel active. When you remain silent, you must accept that the next move may not belong to you. But there is dignity in allowing people to reveal themselves without coaching them. Do not remind him how good you were together. Do not send him a paragraph explaining why he should fight for the relationship. Do not present a closing argument for why you are worthy of love. You are not standing in a courtroom. You do not need to prove your case. The right relationship will not require you to become your own attorney, constantly defending the value of your heart. Let him experience the absence of what he failed to appreciate, not as revenge. As reality, if you were the one carrying the emotional connection, your silence may reveal that there was never enough effort coming from his side. That truth may hurt, but it will also free you. If the connection was real and he is emotionally capable, the space may force him to confront what your constant effort allowed him to avoid. Either way, silence gives you information, and information is more valuable than false hope. But there is another part of becoming unforgettable that most people overlook. You must leave with grace. Many women believe they need one final dramatic message so the man understands exactly how much he hurt them. They want him to feel the weight of every broken promise. They imagine that the perfect paragraph will enter his heart and remain there forever. Sometimes a clear conversation is necessary. You should express your standards when communication is appropriate. But endless explanation weakens the impact of your truth. Say what needs to be said once. Say it calmly. Say it without insults, threats, or attempts to force a reaction. Then let your actions complete the sentence. There is something powerful about a woman who can communicate her disappointment without destroying her dignity. She does not need to expose him publicly. She does not need to compete with another woman. She does not need to make him jealous. She does not need to become cruel just because she was hurt. She leaves with the knowledge that his behavior cannot determine her character. That is the woman he remembers, the woman who had every reason to become chaotic but chose composure, the woman who could have begged but chose to stand, the woman who could have stayed available but chose to protect her peace. Do not misunderstand composure as suppression. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to feel angry, betrayed, confused, and disappointed. Strength does not mean pretending that nothing affected you. Strength means feeling everything without allowing the pain to control your next decision. Cry somewhere safe. Write the message in your notes and do not send it. Speak to someone who loves you. Pray, walk, leap, sleeps. Let the emotion move through your body instead of turning it into another attempt to reach him. There will be nights when silence feels like a mistake. You will wonder whether he assumes you stopped caring. You will imagine that another woman is taking your place. You will fear that every day you remain quiet makes it easier for him to forget you. But love that disappears simply because you stopped doing, all the work was never secure enough to build a future on. You should not have to maintain your position in someone's life through constant reminders. A healthy connection is not a competition for mental space. It is a mutual decision. If someone can only remember your value when you repeatedly place it in front of him, he is not seeing you. He is consuming your availability. Let him forget. If forgetting is what he chooses, that sentence may frighten you. But freedom begins when you stop trying to control the story he tells himself about you. Maybe he will remember you as the woman he should have treated better. Maybe he will remember you as the woman who changed his understanding of love. Maybe he will convince himself that losing you did not matter. Maybe he will move on. You cannot build your healing around any of those possibilities. Your responsibility is not to manage his memory. Your responsibility is to protect your future. And when you truly accept that, you become far more powerful than any strategy could make you. You begin making decisions based on what is good for your spirit, not what might produce a reaction. You stop asking whether posting a picture will make him jealous. You ask whether you genuinely enjoy the moment you are living. You stop wondering whether silence will make him chase. You ask whether the relationship he offered was worthy of being chased. You stop measuring your value through his attention. And you measure your life through your integrity. Did you honor your own boundaries today? Did you keep the promises you made to yourself? Did you invest your energy in people who also invest in you? Did you become slightly more peaceful, disciplined, and honest? This is how you become unforgettable to yourself. And that must happen before you worry about becoming unforgettable to anyone else, because many women are trying to stay on a man's mind while disappearing from their own lives. They remember his schedule but neglect their own needs. They know his favorite songs but cannot remember the last time they did something that made them proud. They can explain his fears, childhood wounds, attachment patterns, and reasons for pulling away, but they have stopped listening to the part of themselves that feels exhausted. Understanding him has become another way of avoiding themselves. Compassion is beautiful, but compassion without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. You can understand why a man is emotionally unavailable and still decide that emotional unavailability is not enough for you. You can recognize that he has been hurt and still refuse to become the place where he continues hurting others. You can love the potential inside him without building your future around whether he ever chooses to become that person. Your heart can remain soft while your standards remain firm. That combination is rare. Softness without standards is easily exploited. Standards without softness can become bitterness, but a woman who holds both becomes unforgettable. She can love deeply, yet she does not chase confusion. She can forgive, yet she does not repeatedly volunteer for the same wound. She can remember the good thing, yet she does not use those memories to deny the truth. She can wish someone well without inviting them back into a place they have not learned to respect. This kind of woman may stay on a man's mind because she represents a love he could not take for granted. When she was present, she was genuine. When she left, she was final. Not final because she stopped caring overnight. Final because she understood that caring for him could no longer require betraying herself. Men often remember unfinished emotional experiences. Not because you deliberately left him confused, but because the mind naturally returns to moments that challenged its expectations. He may have expected you to keep pursuing him. He may have believed you would always answer. He may have assumed that no matter how distant he became, you would remain emotionally available. When you calmly step away, that expectation breaks. Suddenly, he is left with questions you are no longer rushing to answer. Why did she stop trying? Has she finally moved on? Did I misunderstand how much she was willing to tolerate? Will I ever experience that kind of care again? But remember, these questions are not proof of love. They are simply evidence that the pattern changed. Do not become addicted to imagining him suffering in your absence. That keeps you emotionally tied to him. The point of changing the pattern is not to reverse the roles so that he becomes anxious and you become powerful. The point is to end the cycle completely. You do not need him to feel the pain you felt in order for your healing to be valid. You do not need him to regret losing you before you are allowed to move forward. You do not need an apology to confirm that what happened was wrong. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes closure is the moment you stop reopening the door, and each day that you do not reach for temporary relief, your self-trust returns. This is what silence is really building, not his curiosity, your self-trust. Every time you resist the urge to contact someone who has shown you inconsistency, you send yourself a message. I will no longer abandon you when I feel lonely. I will not trade your dignity for 5 minutes of attention. I will not force you to beg for what should be freely given. I am here now and I will protect you. The more you keep these promises, the calmer you become. You no longer need immediate answers because you trust yourself to handle the truth when it arrives. You no longer need to control another person's behavior because you trust yourself to leave what harms you. You no longer fear being alone in the same way because you have discovered that being alone is less painful than being emotionally neglected beside someone. That calmness changes the way you move through the world. It changes your face, your voice, your posture, your standards, your choices. And should he meet you again, he may sense immediately that you are not the same woman he once knew. You are no longer waiting for him to decide who you are. You already know. This is what makes your presence magnetic without forcing it. You are not scanning the room for approval. You are not overgiving to earn security. You are not presenting the most convenient version of yourself so someone will stay. You have learned that anybody who requires you to shrink in order to love you is asking for access to a person who does not exist. The real you has needs. The real you has boundaries. The real you wants consistency. The real you gets tired of confusion. The real you deserves to be met, not managed. And perhaps you hid those parts because you feared they would make you difficult to love. But the right person will not experience your standards as an attack. He will experience them as clarity. A mature man does not need you to become smaller so he can feel comfortable. He does not punish you for asking where the relationship is going. He does not disappear whenever emotional responsibility enters the room. He does not keep you uncertain to maintain control, and you do not need a strategy to stay on the mind of a man who is genuinely building a life with you. He thinks of you because you are part of his intention. He contacts you because he wants connection. He makes plans because he values your time. He offers reassurance through consistency, not because you repeatedly ask him to prove he cares. This is why the deeper goal cannot be to occupy his thoughts forever. Your goal must be to create relationships in which you do not have to wonder whether you matter. Maybe you are listening to this while fighting the urge to text him right now. Your phone is beside you. You have already opened the conversation more than once. You have typed something casual so you will not appear vulnerable. Maybe you plan to send a meme, ask a harmless question, or pretend you accidentally remembered something. But underneath the casual message is a deeper hope. You want relief. You want proof that the connection still exists. You want him to say something that quiets the fear inside you. Before you press send, pause, ask yourself, what am I truly hoping this message will give me? Is it clarity, connection, reassurance, validation? A second chance? Then ask the harder question. Has texting him ever given me that in a lasting way, or has it only restarted the cycle? A warm reply gives you hope, then he becomes distant again. You feel anxious. You reach out. He responds just enough to keep you emotionally invested. Then the uncertainty returns. This cycle can continue for months because every small moment of contact that feels like progress, even when the relationship itself is standing still. Sometimes the bravest message is the one you do not send, not because communication is weak, but because repeating yourself to someone who already understands is self-neglect. He probably knows you care. He probably knows you would be open to an honest conversation. He probably knows how to reach you. You do not need to knock again on a door that was left open from the inside. Put your phone down, take one full breath, let the discomfort exist without obeying it. The urge will rise, peak, and eventually pass. And when it passes, you will feel something small but important. Pride, not the arrogant kind, the quiet pride of a woman who kept a promise to herself. Do that again tomorrow, then the next day. Healing is often less dramatic than people imagine. It is a collection of moments when you choose long-term peace over short-term relief. You do not wake up one morning completely detached. You slowly become someone who no longer needs the old pattern. One day you realize you went several hours without thinking about him. Later, an entire afternoon passes, then someone mentions his name, and instead of feeling a storm inside you, you feel a distant tenderness for the woman you used to be. You do not hate him. You do not need him. You simply understand the chapter. And that understanding is freedom. Ironically, this may be when you become most unforgettable to him, because while he remembers the woman who once gave him endless access, you have become a woman he can no longer reach through the same behavior. The old words no longer move you. The vague apology no longer opens the door. The late night message no longer feels like love. The promise without action no longer impresses you. You have outgrown the version of yourself who accepted confusion because she was afraid of losing connection, and he may realize that what he lost was not simply a woman who cared. He lost access to a woman who transformed. But whether he realizes it is no longer the center of your story, that is the final stage. At first, you stay silent because you hope he will notice. Then you stay silent because you are protecting yourself. Eventually, you are no longer staying silent at all. You are simply living. There is nothing left to resist because your heart has stopped trying to return to what your wisdom has already outgrown. This is the kind of freedom no message can give you. You may always hold a small place in his memory. Perhaps a certain song will remind him of you. Perhaps he will meet someone new and notice the ways your presence was different. Perhaps years from now, he will remember the moment you stopped asking him to see your value. But the most important memory will belong to you. And you will remember the day you chose not to send the message. You will remember how badly you wanted to reach out and how gently you brought your attention back home. You will remember that you survived the silence. You will remember that losing access to him did not mean losing your future. You will remember that your heart did not break because you loved too deeply. It broke because you kept offering deep love in a place where it was not being held with equal care. And from that moment forward, you will become more selective about where you place your tenderness, not guarded, not bitter selective. You will understand that your attention is valuable, your presence is valuable, your loyalty is valuable. Your emotional energy is valuable. You will stop handing these things to people simply because they create chemistry. Chemistry can make someone exciting. Character makes them safe. Attraction can begin a connection. Consistency determines whether it deserves to continue. Words can create hope. Behavior reveals reality. The unforgettable woman understands these differences. She does not confuse intensity with intimacy. She does not confuse being wanted temporarily with being chosen intentionally. She does not confuse a man returning with a man being ready, and she never confuses his inability to value her with evidence that she lacked value. So do not ask how many days you should wait before texting him. Do not turn silence into a countdown. And do not wake each morning hoping today will be the day he finally breaks. That still places your life in his hands. Instead, ask what part of you is being invited to grow through this experience. Maybe you are learning to tolerate uncertainty without chasing. Maybe you are learning that love without reciprocity is not enough. Maybe you are learning to communicate once and then observe. Maybe you are learning that rejection does not reduce your worth. Maybe you are learning that your loneliness is not an emergency. Maybe you are learning how to become the source of safety you once searched for in another person. This is the transformation that stays with you long after the relationship ends. And perhaps that is why some connections enter our lives, not to remain forever, but to reveal the places where we were still leaving ourselves behind. He may have awakened your desire. He may have shown you how deeply you can love. He may also have exposed your fear of abandonment, your habit of overgiving, and the way you confused being needed with being cherished. Do not waste that revelation. Use it. Let this experience build a stronger woman instead of a more suspicious one. Let it teach you boundaries without teaching you cruelty. Let it teach you discernment without closing your heart. Let it teach you that walking away is not always the end of love. Sometimes it is the beginning of self-love. You do not stay on his mind forever by trying to occupy it. You stay memorable by becoming a moment of truth in his life. The woman who cared but did not beg. The woman who listened but did not lose her voice. The woman who offered softness but refused disrespect. The woman who did not need to destroy him in order to leave him. The woman whose absence carried weight because her presence once carried peace. And if he never understands what he lost, your transformation is still not wasted. You did not heal merely to become his regret. You healed so that your next chapter would not be written by the same wound. You healed so you could recognize mutual love when it arrived. You healed so you could stop mistaking anxiety for passion. You healed so you would never again have to ask how to stay on someone's mind while they were barely making space for you in their life. Plea the phone down, not as a trick, not as a punishment, not because you want him to suffer. Place it down because your heart deserves a moment of peace. Let him experience whatever your absence reveals. Let him feel curiosity, relief, regret, indifference, or longing. Those emotions belong to him. Your healing belongs to you. And the woman you are becoming does not chase people through their silence. She listens to it. She learns from it. Then she walks toward a life so full of purpose, peace, love, and self-respect that being remembered by him is no longer the greatest thing she can imagine. The greatest thing she can imagine is remembering herself, because the woman who stays on his mind is not the woman who kept texting him. It is the woman who finally stopped abandoning herself to remain in his life.